So, again, we have Reefer Madness. I guess that's my new job, is to come on here and point out the obviousness of the propaganda machine against medical marijuana specifically. Now, of course, they're going to bring in recreational marijuana into the argument, and they're always going to just distort everything that they possibly can about marijuana and lead you to believe that it's still just as bad as they've always told you it was, because that's just how they want you to feel. They don't give a shit about science. They don't give a shit about the fact that it has been one of the best medicines for kids ever in the world of seizures, especially. I mean, you got kids having seizures. Not only is it proven beyond a reasonable doubt, demonstrated in videos that I've shared, that you basically give a person that's having seizures, specifically these children with Dravet's and other epilepsies that cause hundreds of seizures a week. And not only does it stop the seizure within 20 seconds, but after treating these seizures with cannabis for a while, all of a sudden the number of seizures that these kids are having starts decreasing. And in some cases, they stop having seizures altogether. Now, does the pharmaceutical industry like that shit? No, they don't. They like to keep doling out pills that don't work and having your kids laying around like zombies. That's what they want. They don't want these kids to be out in society having to deal with anything. They want you to be saddled with them being zombies. Seizures, they don't care about those. They don't care if the seizure kills your kid or not. They don't. They really don't. Now they want to tell you the American Academy of Pediatrics, in fact, wants to tell you something about marijuana. And this blew up. Again, the mainstream media they don't talk about nothing too often unless it's something really propaganda-y. Reefer Madness is one of the most sexy topics that they've ever had, all the way back to when Hearst invented it back in the day. Reefer Madness. It was literally invented by the newspaper company that stood to lose lots of money because he was also a big paper manufacturer. Go figure. He would rather cut down trees that take 20 years to grow back than make paper out of hemp. So you had articles from Fox, CNN, Medscape. Medscape is your go-to publication for all Reefer Madness, by the way. They've been doing it for decades. AAP, Fox 5 New York, the usual players. Fox News Radio has a really crazy one. Dude, where's your brain? Pediatricians warn against smoking pot. San Francisco Gate, pediatricians say beware of 420. Live Street Media, pediatricians group issues new guidelines regarding kids and marijuana. That's a funny one. I didn't see any guidelines, but what I did see is them acting like they're going to tell you how to be a good parent, or they're going to tell you how to be a parent in general. Doctors warn parents that marijuana exposure isn't necessarily safe for kids, and here's why. That was Romper, whatever the hell that is. CNN had the pediatricians warn about the dangers of kids using marijuana. But the one that I seen the most was exemplified by the Fox headline, Pediatricians warn against pot use, not your dad's marijuana. Yes. Now, if you do this like I do, or if you even read news about marijuana stories throughout the years, you probably remember this. This is the same propaganda that they rolled out about 4 years ago, and then they did it before that, about four or 5 years before that. This one comes out every 5 years-ish, all right? And it's funny because it comes out sometimes it comes out before potency even goes up. So you had them talking about how potency in the 70s was around 2%, and then in the 80s it was 5%, and all this other garbage. The fact remains is there's always been highly potent marijuana. Why? Because there just always has been. It ain't like we've figured out some kind of a way to make marijuana like super potent. There's like a threshold of about 29% is about the maximum THC content that a marijuana sample of a flower can generally have. And that's about it, you know. And when you're talking about super potent, that's as super as potent as it gets. 20% is the average, wow, it'll knock your socks off potent, I guess. And 29% isn't really that much of a difference. It's the difference between 1 toke and 2. And a 20% as opposed to 15% is the difference between 3 tokes and 2. And if you're talking about the ditchweed that we used to buy when we were kids, that they claim is 2% or 5% THC, yeah, you had to smoke about half a joint or more. You had to smoke it until you couldn't smoke it no more, literally, to get high. So I think it's safer the stronger it is, because you just have to smoke less of it. That's all there is to it. And then you talk about hash or concentrates or whatever, wax, whatever you want to call it, that's always been around too. In fact, I would argue that hash has been more popular than actual marijuana smoking since the beginning of time. Okay, here's the story. An influential group, doctors group, is beefing up warnings about marijuana's potential harms for teens amid increasingly lax laws and attitudes on pot use. Many parents use the drug and think it's okay for their kids, but we would rather not mess around with the developing brain, said Seth Armarian. Here we go with these doctors and what they have to say. Notice how they don't have any facts. No facts at all. No real studies, no real report from a study, no peer-reviewed studies or any of that crap. Nothing. They got nothing. Watch the platitudes roll out. The advice comes in a new report from the American Academy of Pediatrics published Monday in Pediatrics. Now, I read this thing, and it is as full of platitudes as this summary article. The group opposes medical and recreational marijuana use for kids. Let me say that again. The group opposes medical and recreational marijuana use for kids. So right away, buddy, your whole Pediatrics Academy is bullshit. You guys are full of shit, and you got to be kidding me if you don't think kids should use medical marijuana. As I said earlier, it's the number one thing we got. There is nothing better for seizures in kids. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if you think it's better to give kids Adderall and, Xanax when they're, or Ritalin or any of that other shit for ADD, ADHD, or, any kind of an autistic situation, then you'd rather give them that kind of garbage than marijuana, then I don't want to believe, you just discredited yourself. I can't believe anything more you say. It is emphasizing that message. It says emphasizing that message is important because most states have legalized medical use for adults and many have decriminalized the legalized adults' recreational use. Yeah, more than half the states. So come on, man. Those trends have led parents to increasingly ask doctors about kids' use, said Ammerman, a Stanford University pediatrics professor who co-wrote the report. No, it ain't. Parents are not increasingly asking about kids' use. All right, that's bullshit. Prove it. Show me this. So he has this broke down into potential harms. Now, I'm always asking, what's the problem? What's the harm? Why is it dangerous? And they never have an answer. Well, let's see what this says. The brain continues to develop until the early 20s, raising concerns about the potential short and long-term effects of a mind-altering drug. Just because marijuana gets you high and makes you think, why do you think that that's bad for your brain, man? But some studies suggest, there you go with your some studies suggest. That is not a conclusive statement. But what do they suggest? That teens who use marijuana at least 10 times a month develop changes in brain regions affecting memory and the ability to plan. The ability to plan? See, this is weird. They take Reefer Madness from way back in the day, and then they add some doctors to it, and then they say it differently, and somehow people are going to somehow believe it. Some changes may be permanent, the report says. So that's not only to put it out there that there's going to be some changes in your brain but they're going to be permanent to scare you even more. Now, they're talking about regions affecting memory and the ability to plan. There's never been a test that proved that marijuana use is connected to any of this. None of it. This is just reefer madness. Like, oh, you're going to be a dumb, forgetful person that can't plan shit out. You can't make decisions. You don't have cognitive abilities. There's no proof of this. You don't have a study that proves this. And if you say some studies suggest, that is as bullshit. That's as pure bullshit as you can get without going out into the pasture and turning over an actual cow pie. Frequent use starting in the early teen years may lower IQ scores, and some studies have shown that starting marijuana use at a young age is more likely to lead to addiction than starting in adulthood. All those things that I emphasize in there are qualifiers that qualify this statement as complete bullshit as well. So there's no study that says anything about early teen years smoking lowered IQ scores. None. There is none. They took a bunch of low IQ score having people and asked them if they smoked marijuana or not. That's, these tests are so correlative. Every one of these so-called studies and these, they have shown or they have suggested, that just means those are buzzwords that really mean correlative studies. These are correlative at best, and the correlations aren't laid out in a plain enough way, to tell you that, the whole, to give you a really good idea of how reliable this information is. But they're talking about frequent use of marijuana in early teen years and how it may lower IQ scores. No, that's a correlative study. And the thing I hate about these doctors and all these people that are against marijuana is correlative studies always are good enough when they're giving you their side of the story. Correlative is good enough. But when I try to say something correlative, like, the mouth or the marijuana that you give kids for seizures to stop the seizures is also making them have less seizures. Well, you might tell me, oh, that's a correlative study. You just did that by observation. They might not have that much to do with each other. You hear it all the time when people try to give cases for marijuana being medicine. But when they want you to be afraid of marijuana, boy, oh boy, it's always permanent damage. It's always going to affect your brain. Not all teen users develop these problems, and some may be more vulnerable because of genetics or other factors. Now, once again, we got a whole bunch of not all and may and other and this and that. So as you swim through the platitudinal, river of shit here, they do kind of back out a little bit of their correlative bullshit by saying that not everybody has this problems. Maybe it's the people that are genetically prone to addiction and lower IQ scores and other factors like where they came up, where they live, all kinds. When it comes to IQ scores, there is so much, that goes into that. And then when it comes to, I'm not saying there's so much that goes into how smart a person is going to be in general. It's like an IQ test is something completely different. If this person isn't, attuned to the kind of knowledge that the IQ test is looking for, they might score low on it. But when it comes to addiction, you can't just cross-section a correlative study and be like, yep, look at that. People that smoke when they're young, addicted every time. No, you got to look at it like this. Are they prone to addiction? Addiction is not a substance-based thing. Addiction is a personality-based disorder. It's not, you aren't going to run into a substance that you try it and you're like, oh, I got to do that for the rest of my life. So addiction doesn't work like that. Addiction is a personality disorder, nothing more or less. Is it genetic? We may look into that more. People say alcoholism is provably a genetic thing. Well, or nicotine addiction and other things. Let's look into that. Let's study that instead of just go out there and fly off the handle with your correlation and say that your correlation is okay to shop around as truth when it's full of ifs and maybes and shit. Now they have the medical versus recreational use. Solid research on medical marijuana's effects in children and teens is lacking. No, it ain't. It's not lacking that much. Although some studies have suggested it may benefit kids with hard-to-treat seizures. Some studies don't suggest that. A lot of studies proved it. So when you look at this article, it is as biased as it can fucking get. And that's why I got to come in as biased as I can get. So sometimes you might think I'm a little over the top with my rhetoric. I have to be, because I'm fighting against this kind of shit. This is the kind of shit I have to read every fucking day. These people come out with this shit and they're like wishy-washy, wish-wash-washy, wishy-washy, but be afraid of it. And then when they see a real study about kids having seizures and marijuana helping them, they don't know what the hell's going on. All right, finally, on this slide, the report says other potential benefits, doses, and effects are mostly unknown. They're mostly unknown, but when it comes to potential benefits, we can study that. Doses, not sure what doses, when it comes to doses, there's no maximum dose. There's no death level dose, so doses is a speculative thing. It depends on the person, and effects are mostly unknown. So all these things can be studied if marijuana is legal. And, for them to say that we just don't know, and this is their report, well, they haven't looked at any studies. They wouldn't bother. We've already seen where they don't bother to look at studies that don't support their argument. So how would they know? How would they know if they didn't search Google for studies that show that there's other potential benefits for medical marijuana for kids or doses? Why don't they study that? Why don't they look into that? There is some reports out there, probably. Effects. What other effects are there? Well, look into it. I'm sure you can find these things if you look. Recreational use is illegal for those under the age of 21, even in states that allow adult use. Parents should avoid using marijuana in front of their kids and should keep all marijuana products stored out of kids' sight, the academy says. Man, what is this? Trying to tell parents how to act. I don't see a whole lot of academics out there telling parents to please keep your orange pill bottles away from the kids. I just read something the other day that said that most of these overdoses that we keep hearing about are people overdosing on other people's pills, which is code word for parents accidentally leaving their pills somewhere where the kids can get to them and overdose. And now not all overdoses end in death, but a lot of them end up in the hospital. And that's how we got these big numbers. And when people get to the hospital and they're like, where'd you get the pills? Because you don't have a prescription for them. My mom, my dad, or I stole them from my parents, or I stole them from somebody that they know. They don't tell you to keep the guns out of the kids' reach. We have hundreds of deaths, if not thousands a year, from accidental gun shootings, from kids getting guns that were just laying around and just, don't know what they're doing with them or think they're toys and end up shooting somebody and killing them. Some young children who accidentally swallowed their parents' pot-containing cookies or drinks have landed in the emergency room for mostly minor symptoms, although some developed breathing problems. That's a scare tactic if you don't know. Overdose deaths, as we know, are caused by people that stop breathing because opioids bind to receptors in various breathing apparatuses and functions, that you have, like your nervous system, your lungs, all the things that are responsible for involuntary reactions, involuntary muscles, doing things that they're supposed to do just to carry on with your life. Well, marijuana doesn't cause that. And when they're talking about, young people that accidentally swallowed their parents' pot-containing cookies or whatever drinks have landed them in emergency. Will they come home the next day alive? A lot of these people that accidentally, which it's no accident, or if it is, really feel bad for that family. If somebody accidentally eats the wrong amount of pills because they stole a bottle of pills from their parents, or it was just laying around and they thought it was candy because pills look like candy to some kids, they die. A lot of times they overdose and they die before they can even get to the emergency room. And when you're talking about parents leaving guns around, I'm not even going to tell you. The numbers are high. The numbers are high on guns used against people in the house because it was just left laying around and somebody grabbed it, accidentally used it. Who's using marijuana? Government data shows that almost 40% of U.S. high school students have tried marijuana. About 20% are current users, and close to 10% first tried it before the age of 13. All these numbers are pulled out of the thin air, really, but really these numbers are all typical averages, and you'll see my chart in a little bit here. But what they don't tell you here is the trends. The trends are, especially in places where marijuana has been legalized in some form, the trend has been that adult use has been about the same or has gone up a little bit, and use by teenagers or high school students has actually gone down, especially in Colorado and Washington and places where marijuana has been legalized in some form. Use has increased in recent years among those 18 and older, but not among teens. So they do say that, but they don't really tell you. It's not illustrated that well. Still, kids aged 12 to 17 increasingly think that marijuana use is not harmful. Oh, you know why? Because they're smart. These are people, these kids, 12 to 17 these days, have access to the internet where you can easily read all kinds of factual information about marijuana. And by the time you get done reading a couple things about it, you realize that the hype that the government has and this reefer madness that these guys are pushing is over-the-top bullshit with no facts to back it up and constant plethora of platitudes to just, to help you canoe down that river of shit. Dr. Cheryl Ryan, a Yale University pediatrics professor and lead author of the Academy report, said marijuana, quote, is the drug of choice for many of her teen patients in New Haven, Connecticut. Well, be thankful for that. My God. Some think daily use is safe, noting that their parents or grandparents smoked pot in college and turned out okay. But today's marijuana is much more potent and potentially more risky, Ryan said. Much more potent. Now that's just a mistake for them to really play this up. When you're talking about a difference of 10% or so, it's not super big difference type stuff. Like I keep saying, it's a difference between smoking about a half a joint or just taking a couple of puffs off of a joint. And you're not going to sit there and smoke yourself dead. You can't. It's impossible. So what's the risk? What is the potentiality of this? What is it? What's the risk? Because it's more potent. What risk do you have? It's not more addictive. We found out scientifically, and I think this study was done with using cigarettes, that when you make something less potent, it becomes more addictive because people use more of that substance to get the thing that they're addicted to. For example, if you make a light cigarette, people will tend to smoke more of them because they're trying to get the same amount of nicotine into their body. But, you can do your studies if you want, but this was not a study. Whatever their report was, it was correlative at best, and it didn't prove anything to anybody, especially people that want strict data-based studies that look at real cases, not just, I don't know what these correlations, where they even come from. But, here's somebody that's one of the lead writers of this report. And when you're talking about people from these big universities like Yale and all this shit, they got there because they didn't smoke marijuana. Everybody that was there before them, everybody that was an authority figure in their life, stay away from marijuana and you'll go far in life. So they have an axe to grind with marijuana, as in case you didn't know that. Okay. But this is one of the lead persons that wrote the lead author that wrote this thing. Somehow is telling you some cooked up stories about, these people that their parents and grandparents smoked pot in college and they turned out okay. Oh my God. Today's marijuana is not that much different. And if you were like me, somebody that's always looked for the best pot available, you might have found that marijuana potency hasn't really changed a whole lot. Here's this chart I was talking about earlier. This was a University of Michigan study in 2014. Now look at, particularly, all of these numbers have gone down historically, as you can see, from the upper area of between 35 and 40 to right around 35. And, when they said earlier that 40%, none of these numbers have never went to 40%. This is people that used marijuana in the past 12 months. And it could even have been just one time. So it covers all of those categories that they were talking about. You had the just tried it or use it regularly or blah, blah, blah. These don't lie. The more marijuana has become normalized and the more it's become legalized, at the end of the thing, you'll see the trend is going down on all three age groups. Then the less kids are interested in it, especially medical marijuana. When you have medical marijuana in states like Michigan, it almost makes marijuana seem like just like diabetes medicine. Like, kids are just simply not into it, man. Well, that's all I got on that. If you like, getting your weed news from me, please subscribe. If you like my videos, share them. If you're in groups where people are talking about marijuana or whatever, some kind of group where maybe the subject comes up, feel free to link my videos on that. And other than that, drop me a like once in a while. And thanks to all the people that watch my videos.